It's the BWI Daily Edition. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Monday, the final Monday of the 2022 regular season. Even though it's over, we are going to give some due to the game against Michigan State. We're not going to blow right by it into off-season talk, although we're going to start with a lot of off-season talk. So let's get to all of the great stuff coming up on the Daily. I'm Thomas Frank Carr, your host today. We have a great panel. Sorry, three things at once and my brain just glitched for a second. Nate Bauer, already we're off the rails. Sean Fitz, the experts here that are going to discuss all the things going on with Penn State football. But we have to get to something right off the bat, and it is not Nate's bowl predictions. We've got to get to something even more important. Fitz, we're coming right to you for some breaking news. What do you have as the latest for Penn State football?
I am disappointed we're not getting into Nate's bowl predictions segment right away, but huge news for Penn State. Olu Fashanu, the fantastic left tackle, started most of the games this year. He's coming back next year. Is it breaking news? Not so much. We've been talking about on our site on Blue White Illustrated for a while now that they were against all odds heavily leaning toward coming back. And now that they've gotten out of the season, they get a chance to start to gain some momentum in getting in retention, really, with that roster and everything coming up in December. But getting Olu back, massive, absolutely massive. This is a guy that ton of talent, a ton of development. You have to credit Phil Troutwine and the job that he's done there. But you've got your left tackle. You've got a 5-star quarterback in Drew Aller, who we expect to be the starter, but whatever. But you've got to you have the ability to protect his blind side with a franchise left tackle that would have gone in the first round. I don't know if he was going to go top 5, top 10, whatever the mocks were projecting him to go. But it's really, really important to protect that guy. And that offensive line is starting to really come together in 2023. I know they've got a couple decisions that they're waiting on, but you've got Hunter Nourzad already coming back. Landon Tengwall is going to be coming off of surgery, but he's definitely back. Wormley's going to be back. And now the big piece, and I'm not trying to slate any of the freshmen or JB Nelson, but the big piece is back, and that's absolutely massive.
Yeah, so one final question. Penn State, we had talked about in some needs in the transfer portal, needs in the offseason. Tackle had been on that list. Does this remove that from that list, seeing what we saw from Drew Shelton at the end of the season filling in for Fashanu? Or do they still want depth at that position? Are they still looking for another body there, considering what happened to them this year where they had so many injuries at that position?
Look, offensive tackle is so hard for that to Snyder's calling me for some reason. So maybe we'll have some recruiting news by the end of this. No, it's so hard to find offensive tackles at any level, high school, JUCO, portal, what have it. So they're still going to look, but it certainly takes down the need. You've got Drew Shelton, who started a bunch of games. They're awaiting a decision from Bryce Effner, who's a quality depth piece as well. So you've got a ton going for you, but you're still going to look for more. They're still going after Keyshawn Blackstock. He's a junior college prospect that's coming in for an official visit in December. Not going to turn that one off, but tackles are so hard to find. And then you look further down the depth chart. You're not sure what you're getting from Jimmy Christ, Golden Achumba, Ibrahim Traore. There's so many guys that are question marks there that you just have to continue to plug holes and fill gaps. And whether that's a starter or not, it's going to be very tough to come in and get a starter at offensive tackle or anywhere in the offensive line. It's going to be tough to find a guy that wouldn't start, but they're still going to have to look.
So, Nate, I want to get to you here quickly. You called this on the site Penn State's first win of 2023. Can you tell us a little more about what you mean there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little cliche, but the way that James Franklin talks and puts things into the context of every day, every week, every month of the off season is an opportunity to get better, or in some cases get worse. Like this is it. Right? It's funny because I was actually doing a story as it was today about how so many of the things that transpired literally a year ago at this time, right? The immediacy right after that Michigan State game last year, you had so many different things happen, right? One was Brent Pry leaving. You had the opportunity for Sean Clifford to come back and John Sutherland to come back. Tig Brown announced he was coming back. Those were decisions, right, that the program made. Shortly thereafter, Manny Diaz coming back, or not coming back, but the replacement for Brent Pry. Just on and on down the list. Mitchell Tinsley in the transfer portal. So much of Penn State's success this season was set up by the things that happened in the first couple of weeks of December last year. And okay, here you are, November 28th, and you have a major potential, right? It's not as though Penn State was without options if Olu Fashanu did not come back. There were options, but this is the best option. This is such a major bonus to have a guy who, like, it's hard to contextualize, but it's just so unheard of to have someone who's projected to go as highly as he is turn down that opportunity and make it wait for a year. And right. We understand all of the reasons that he's doing it and that he's choosing this. And, certainly the academic side of things is something that James Franklin pointed to earlier during this season as being very important to Olu and his family. But again, for it to happen it's a huge win, right? November 28th, win for Penn State football. We'll see what happens in the remaining days, but it's a good place to start.
Fitz, I want to go back to you on that quickly, talking about Fashanu and family being very important in this decision, correct? This was, when he says that he consulted his family and coaches, like, that's not a cliche, that's not a line that you put in a graphic. From what I understand, it was very much a conversation with him and his parents about this. They
came to Penn State I guess it'd be in October, I believe now, and had the conversation about the draft status. At this point, he was top 5 in CBS, top 10, all over the mock drafts and things like that. And Penn State had gotten feedback from pro scouts, and it was good feedback. Now he hasn't played a ton, but the strides that he made and everything that he did was pointing to him being a first-round pick. They laid the information out there and basically said, you probably should go. Like, this is a situation where you're going to, if this is all data points and all logic and everything like that, the logic is to go, because this is a really great opportunity. The family, so ingrained in academics, just wary about his future with an NFL locker room, all this kind of stuff. They were the ones that wanted to come back. This was not a hard sell job. Now, Penn State absolutely wanted him back. This was not a hard sell job by the Nittany Lions to get him back for next year. Obviously, they'll take any years that they can get out of a franchise left tackle. But this was a situation where they wanted the academics. They wanted him to get as far on his graduation track as possible and hopefully graduate before he leaves. But this is an exception to the rule. I mean, this is something where we're talking last year, Jesse Luketa goes and is a late round pick. This is a guy that's a top half of the first round pick, passing up all of that and everything that comes with it to come back. I mean, that's a big deal. And this is the way that the decisions have started to fall for Penn State. And I'm not saying it's going to, like I said, this is the exception to the rule, but Dotson coming back, Brisker coming back. You mentioned Jair Brown coming back last year, maybe not at the magnitude of this decision today, but things have started to come back around. I know NIL is going to play a factor into these decisions moving forward, and I think it's going to play big into the portal in December, which should be a very, very active month, at least on our site, covering this stuff. But it's a special case. Olu, special kid, special family, and I got to think that James Franklin was pretty happy to have that conversation and have that be the outcome, because it hasn't always been the case.
Yeah, and I want to go back to something there that you said about being in the locker room, being 20. He's 19 right now. I think he turns 20 in December. I've talked about this on the show again. I just want to say it here because I think it's important. There has been one 20-year-old that has performed well in his first season since 2017 in the NFL. That is Penei Sewell, who was a top 5 pick, and I believe he might have had 2 years in college football that he played, but generally he was seen as a generational talent. I think Fashanu is in that category, but again, there are only so many exceptions to the rule. So coming back for another year, as big and strong as he is, another year of strength and development before going to the NFL, from a play perspective and from a run blocking perspective, I think is an excellent move, because he will be a top 5 pick in 2023. This year, limited film, the injury, I think that Fitz, you say this all the time. We love to pick things apart during the draft process, and people would find things that they don't like about. There'd be some of those on film. So another year is, I think, going to solidify everything that we've seen from him. Want to get one thing in here before we move on with the show. David has some good vibes about 2023 as well. O-line is going to be stacked. Offense should be the best James Franklin has had, and D should remain elite. Do or die the next 2 years for Penn State. Keep recruiting and win. Yeah, I know, Nate. Do or die. There it is. There it is right there, Nate. I know you love that.
Oh my goodness. Yep. It's yeah. No, we'll see. It's so hard to grapple with this sport right now, in the sense that it's not even just do or die for the next 2 years. It's really, I think, in the minds of many, do or die for Ohio State and Michigan. Like, that's it. We are excluding the possibility that somebody else on Penn State's I mean, legitimately, we can say this right now. We don't know what the Big Ten schedule is for 2024, do we?
I don't think so. Yeah. And by 2024, there's most likely going to be a playoff expansion as well, right? So and
also most likely no divisions. This is a totally separate subject, but in any case, I think that Penn State needs to get some receivers as well. But that's also to David's. In any case, a good offensive line. That was a great place to start. It's a very, very solid thing that Penn State has an opportunity to have an offensive line that isn't in purgatory, right? That isn't in this state of maybe they'll take the next step.
Progress, some retention for progress.
You saw the progress this year, and now all of that progress has the opportunity to return for next year. I'm not saying that all of it will, but so much of it is young and has years of eligibility remaining. This being the biggest piece with Olu, I just think it bodes. It does bode very, very well in terms of the offensive line being a strength, but not only that, the impact that it will have certainly on Drew Allar, and then also Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. Like, put all of those guys together, it gets interesting.
Before we get to anything else, I do want to say, please, if you're watching, like the video and subscribe to Blue White Illustrated here on YouTube so that you get all the information, all the context of all these things. Because as Fitz said, we've been talking about this at the Blue White Illustrated Lions Den message forum for a while. This information has been out there for our subscribers to know. But you here on YouTube, you're getting it here on the live show. You're getting it here on replay. So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel so you get it eventually, and subscribe to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com for $10 a month. That will get you inside access to all that information we're talking about until next football season. Bobby, now that Olu's coming back, do we beat Georgia in the Natty by 14 or 7 next season? Yeah. So no problem, no lack of enthusiasm.
This is going to go really well. I'm sure of it. It's all going to go perfectly.
Always does, yeah.
Fitz, I want to ask you about that offensive line and the things that we kind of talked about going forward. I'm excited because we have a chance to actually see Fashanu and Tengwall play together. Is there any conversation that you've heard about the bowl game, or what's the status there? Do you have any information about not Tengwall, I understand, but with Fashanu and the James Franklin's vague comments after a couple of games this year about when he might return?
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't really practiced or anything like that, so we haven't seen him out there on Wednesday nights or anything like that. James Franklin did not note him as a guy that was out for the season, which in that case, and this is kind of what we said when he got hurt, they give themselves all the slack they need just in case he can come back and play in the bowl. He continues to throw hopeful out there as if that means something other than, I'm not going to tell you guys anything. But it'd be nice to get him back. I will say this. the last 4 games of the season, and I know the competition level being what it is, but getting Drew Shelton out there, getting that combination, they started the same combination over the last 5 or 4 weeks, which actually was surprising to me when I went back and looked. But getting those guys the ability to get reps, get live reps, Drew Shelton, throwing Nourzad in there, you give yourself the ability, and we talked about this at different positions before, to cultivate depth. Now that 2020 class that included Olu Fashanu, it was really not a hit in terms of what they brought in 5 guys, and so far one has played. One has been great. Olu projected where he's projected, but at the same time, haven't gotten a ton to dent the depth chart either. It's not a situation where these guys are, pushing for a starting job, but Drew Shelton obviously pushing for a starting job. JB Nelson, they fought tooth and nail to keep that red shirt on him, and somehow it worked out. Vega Ione stepped in as a true freshman and played more than those guys in the 2020 class have played. So there's a lot going for them in terms of cultivating this depth and getting where they need to be, which is another reason I see it being a little bit tough to sell an offensive lineman in the portal, just because you've got a lot of bodies that have played a decent amount of football and you've added reps for that. And if you get a guy like Effner to come back, that's a value position right there. And Caedan Wallace still out there. There's a lot of possibilities here where you can seriously see some competition in that room next year. So I think that's exciting. Absolutely. It's still the offensive line. So it's going to, take some things and fine tune it and figure out how to make it work. But at the same time, it just makes everything and every other position a little bit easier to work with. You've got 2 running backs coming out back that are true freshmen stars, essentially. Your quarterback, you hope, can be a star. And I agree with Nate. They've got to find something at receiver.
What would you do with Drew Shelton? I think he performed admirably for a true freshman being thrown at the end of the season. You can't put the red shirt back on by not playing him next season. So, I know a lot of this has time to play out and the coaches have time to make these decisions, but it seems like Penn State is in an enviable position now where they've got 2 players that they can reasonably trust at that left side. But would you personally consider playing him at left guard? Because I know that James Franklin talked about playing him at a different position, or that right tackle position that's struggled to maintain a level of consistency even when healthy this season. Would those options be on the table to you, or would you keep him Shelton at left tackle and groom him for the future?
No, I mean, you got to put your franchise left tackle at left tackle and then figure out what to do with Shelton. What's interesting is he has played some left guard this year. It hasn't been something where he's stuck there, but they saw him coming in as a guy that is a tackle that could also play guard, a swing guy, they typically say. So I see him on the right side at right tackle, but also at left guard is certainly an opportunity for him to get in, because you're trying to find your best 5. I mean, this isn't a situation where you go out and pigeonhole one guy in at one spot and then try and make it work from there. I know Tengwall will be back. Nourzad, you could probably foresee him stepping into center, as Nate has reported in the past. So the important thing here is you've got options, and you did not always have options. Last spring, we were talking about 6 or 7 offensive linemen, scholarship offensive linemen, and then all your walk-ons left as well. So we got that spring game last year that everybody wants to forget, myself included. So you've just got options, and that's the great thing to have. JB Nelson coming back with 3 years to play 3 next year, Vega with 4 years to play 4. You're starting to feel a lot better. And like I said, credit Phil Trautwein. He's done a really, really good job in a scenario where kind of felt like you were hanging on the edge there for a while, but they have come through and done a nice job. Still improvement to make to catch up to the Michigans of the world on that offensive line. But on paper, there's a lot to like right there.
A lot of stuff out the gate, some big news, but I do want to make sure we get to you in the chat because we got some people donating to the channel. If you want to put something in the tip jar, we always appreciate it. Helps keep the lights on, helps us all sleep better at night, especially me. And if you want to, great, but we'll be getting to your questions today. No questions, just want to thank you guys for a great regular season and all your hard work. We are. Thank you so much for the donation. Thank you for the kind words, by the way, in the holiday season. That is so nice of you. Steven, a regular here, says, great year of support from you guys. Thanks again. Wow. Coming down here, and it's just appreciation in the chat. People are in a good mood, Nate. Olu Fashanu's coming back, and people are letting it flow. How are you feeling today, by the way?
was going to say, all of a sudden, Drew Allard not getting the first series in the second half against Maryland doesn't matter quite as much, believe it or not. I know.
Yeah,
Fitz has already heard that joke, but I'm just going to keep going to the well. I love it.
You really are. You're going to keep polishing until it works.
That's right.
Lambda has a question about the portal, and I think that's something that I want to get to a little bit later, but it is probably top of mind, so let's touch on it now. Definitely need to replace PJ Musfer on the D line. That is a big portal need in his opinion. Fitz, I think that's an astute observation. Is defensive tackle on the same level as offensive tackle, or is it just that upper echelon of big men? And will Penn State be able to find a guy to plug and play like they did Derek Tangelo, or and a guy of starting quality in the portal?
That's going to be tough. Like you mentioned, I don't think anybody saw Tangelo being as good as he was. This was a guy that had a bunch of production, a lot of experience and things like that. So the opportunity will be there, especially now in college football. I think you're going to see a lot more guys go into the portal to sort of test the waters and figure out what's out there. Bud Elliott made a very good point on his podcast talking about the class of 2021 and how that was the COVID class where they didn't get to visit places and coaches didn't get to evaluate in person. It's sort of a perfect storm to see what's out there. And those guys still have eligibility left. So I think that's the fascinating part of that. But beyond that, yeah, defensive tackle, it's hard to find big guys that can move like that. Now, the good thing is they probably have 2 or 3 years in a college strength program. So it's not like you're bringing in a guy that's a high school guy that you're asking to play in a scenario that's a little bit over his head at this point. So It can be done. But I'm not sure it's a situation where you're going to go out and find a can't miss guy, because Derek Tangelo was a really, really good player. I'm a huge Derek Tangelo fan. I'm not sure if I've said that before, but that wasn't a can't miss situation. The can't miss situations at defensive tackle are either taken care of and staying in their school, going to the draft, or everybody's going to be on them. So that's something that rings true at every level. If you have a high school guy that can move, that's 6'3", 300 pounds, he is infinitely more valuable than a lot of other players in his class at his position. So I think that's what makes it so tough. Is not so much the pool that's out there, and we don't know what's going to be out there because the transfer portal has not opened up for FBS guys that haven't had coaching changes yet. But that is a position where everyone needs. I mean, that's offensive tackle is one thing, but defensive tackle is probably it's equal on the defensive side of the ball.
Nate, we're going to shift gears here and come down from Penn State's biggest win of the weekend to Penn State's second biggest win of the weekend, which is beating Michigan State. We're actually going to talk about the game for a second.
Okay.
This is the interesting thing that I find in this scenario. Penn State wins 35-16, but clearly the way those 35 points were scored was not necessarily the prettiest thing that we've ever seen. And that's been the case with this offense over the course of, I don't even want to say this season, but definitely intermittently throughout the season.
Yeah.
Do you evaluate a team's performance differently when the offense isn't playing necessarily well, but overall it's a good team win? And does offense skew our perception of wins and losses?
Maybe. I think that Penn State, the first game that I'm going to go to is 2021 at Ohio State, right? Is Penn State's offense might have had its best game of the year in an otherwise awful year for the offense, right? And Sean Clifford played really well. It was a good offensive game, and but they still lost, right? Penn State, what I saw from the offense on Saturday, I think was two things. One, the disjointedness, the inconsistency that has really been present through most of the season was still present. And then also, hey, 3 starting offensive linemen have not played in a month, haven't been able to play. Parker Washington, your most productive wide receiver, not able to play. You can see the ways you've got Keandre Lambert-Smith throwing a pass for a touchdown. You can see that there are smoke and mirrors elements of it that Penn State and Mike Yurcich had to pull out because the offensive line, I think, it's a balancing act from the commentating side of things, right? Because you have to praise them for the juggling act of the red shirts and figuring it out and being able to push through and all of those things. But if you're evaluating it just on its face without caveats, Sean Clifford had a bunch of pressure in the Rutgers game. I don't know if it was necessarily the case against Michigan State. I thought that he tried to escape clean pockets a decent amount on Saturday. I sound like an idiot just talking like this. That's
no. Early on, that was definitely a problem. I think he corrected it. This is the funny thing is, like, what I said in my film studies, we came full circle with Sean Clifford, where when they needed it in his final game at Beaver Stadium, he came around and he actually played pretty well in the fourth quarter and delivered when the offensive line was stagnant. But you make a really good point there about the offensive line and some of the conversations I've had with people here on the show and elsewhere that, man, this team's really hitting their stride. Look at all these things. And it's like, whoa. True freshman left tackle. You want to go back and replay some of those games with a true freshman left tackle. Opponent does matter, and you make a good point about the offense. Fitz, one of the things I noticed was during this particular game plan, there wasn't a lot of drop-back passing. They weren't, especially early in the game, it was RPO, it was read option. It was a bunch of things to kind of disguise, smoke and mirrors, as Nate called it, to protect those young players and to protect Clifford from bad situations against a decent offensive line. Later in the game, though, they were able to deliver. So do you think that maybe they had more than we were thinking, or maybe even the coaching staff had anticipated?
Yeah, I mean, probably a little bit. I think I agree with Nate. I mean, you can throw the kudos on everybody for doing it, but if you actually sit there and grade it out, it wasn't their best game or anything like that. So it gave you it was one of those things where in the middle of the season, talked about Sean Clifford giving them the opportunity to run more of their playbook, to do more of the things at the line of scrimmage and make these changes and things like that. I think that's what happened as a whole. You gave him the opportunity to sort of widen the field. You gave him the opportunity to get things to going in different directions, spreading out the defense and making it happen, especially in that Rutgers game when he started to run. I mean, I think that's kind of indicative of the way that they called things, and it opened it up for them. They used what they had in terms of experience and what they had in terms of, I don't want to say playmakers, but they meshed their experience and their playmakers, and they got some tight ends out of it and things like that. So I don't think it's all what you suggested it to be, but I think that there's elements of that, and they grew into it. Mike Yursich grew into it, made some really good calls, and then kind of overwhelmed them. You look at that fourth down call where they just had the numbers, and sometimes it's that simple. I mean, sometimes it's getting the ball away from your offensive line and trying to make some things happen. So I don't know that it's all that you suggested, but there's certainly elements of both sides, I think.
The fourth down call, you're trusting your quarterback to make. I mean, it's not. I don't know, T. Frank, you're a better judge of this than me. I mean, it's a screen pass, yes, but those aren't the easiest throws to make, are they?
Well, Michigan. I put this in the film study. Michigan State made it pretty easy by being very wrong in that situation. Pointed out right before the snap, Xavier Henderson sent one of the linebackers back to the box. And on that play, there are three options: the screen, Tyler Warren, and then running. And the least dangerous of those three is Sean Clifford running. So I don't know why they were covering that like it was a priority when Nick Singleton's on the sideline. But in that situation, you have to throw the ball accurately and on. Like that's a throw you have to make 100 times out of 100 in that situation.
Yeah. They ran the slant to Warren. They set that thing up against Ohio State by running the exact same motion, putting those guys out to the wide, and then throwing it back to Warren, which nobody saw coming. I mean, let's be honest here. So I don't know. I didn't go back and look at the Ohio State, but maybe that's a numbers check or things like that. But they came out and you really saw the evolution. And I know we talk all the time about Sean Clifford and his limitations and things like that, but he's not limited up here. I mean, he knows what he's doing and he knows where to put the ball. It's just a matter of whether or not it gets there, and it got there on Saturday.
We're going to take a quick break here to talk about the sponsor of our Monday live show, and that is RogueShop.com. You can watch me think and talk at the same time, which is super fun. RogueShop.com, which, by the way, talking about thinking and overthinking, they are a great resource for that. If you need a holiday present, they're running a Black Friday sale right now. And if you don't know what RogueShop.com is a premier small batch cannabis farm in Wisconsin that is a sponsor of the show. And I'm going to show you some of the stuff they got going on over on their site, which is a pretty cool site. They got it all giddy up for Christmas. So you want to check this out, RogueShop.com. They have products, as you can see, for sleep, for pain. You can get $75 off free shipping for any purchase over $75 right now, and use promo code BWI for 10% off your purchase. I've used Rogue Shop to get myself through football season. A lot of late nights, staying up late, working hard, working 12, 14-hour days. I don't say that to go, hey, look at me, look how hard I'm working. Because here's the thing, guys. Everybody works hard. Nobody isn't working hard. But if you have a problem like I do, winding down and your brain doesn't stop spinning, RogueShop.com is great for that. They also are great for pain relief and for stress management, all of those things. They give you a lot of flexibility in different products, so go check it out, RogueShop.com. And don't forget, they have their Black Friday, Cyber Monday sale going on right now. Nate, let's talk about the defense. I don't feel like we give enough credit to the defense because they allowed 16 points. And they allowed a total of 40 points in November. How do you feel about that, given when you look at the schedule, who it was?
Yeah, it's a combination of things. I think that Saturday credit is due to Michigan State's receivers for making some spectacular catches. Like, that wouldn't have been a game if it had not been for. It's not as though Peyton Thorne was making incredible passes, on the money passes, right? At least I didn't think so. But I thought that their receivers won some reps in very timely situations. So you got to tip your cap. I mean, it is what it is. But yeah, Abdul Carter is a heat-seeking missile, and Adisa Isaacs getting sacks, and just the suffocating nature of Penn State's defense. I just you see the storylines and the way that people talk about things as it all makes sense. None of it is a surprise, but it taking time to find all of the group. Manny Diaz said something to me this summer that I thought was, let's not get too carried away, but like very insightful about how the beauty of his, I don't know if it's just his defense, but defense in general is in the nuance. And it takes time to get the nuance. And so some of the things that I think were problematic or of concern, what have you, at the beginning of the season for Penn State's defense made a ton of sense. They made all the sense in the world. Got exploited and bludgeoned at Michigan against a very good Michigan team. But since then, it's just been a progressive kind of week by week circumstance where, yes, some of it is the opponent not having all the horses in the world to compete, but also just Penn State's defense gradually getting better and better and better and better to where you have not just a sound defense, but players making special plays. And that's what seems to separate it to me.
Fitz, I want to go to you because after the game, if you haven't checked out our instant analysis video, one of the best of the year, I think you guys really got into the heart of a lot of this is how much do you give this group and this team credit for what they've done in the final stretch of the season, given that they played a team without a quarterback, a team with a bad quarterback, and a team with a quarterback that is sometimes good and then sometimes is Sean Clifford-y in giving the ball to the other team. So I guess how do you gauge progress that Nate is talking about versus it's on easy mode now?
It's so tough because you overwhelm them. I mean, this wasn't a situation where you out-schemed them and did all these things, and they did some really nice stuff, as you pointed out in your film pieces. But it wasn't a situation where it was a chess match, and Penn State, outflanked them and did all the good things that you need to do to force turnovers and things like that. You were flat out better than these teams. But at the same time, there's something to be said for overwhelming a Big Ten team, a Division I Power 5 team, and they did it 4 weeks in a row, which is really tough to do. And on top of that, this is a defense that outside of the Michigan game really didn't give up the big plays, the back-breaking plays. Obviously, you want to forget everything that happened in the Big House, but this is a team that kept things in front of them. Even Ohio State, Marvin Harrison went out and made some ridiculous plays. Nate, as you mentioned, Michigan State's receivers did the same thing on Saturday against really good coverage.
Which you called, by the way, on the Thursday show. You called that they're going to make some ridiculous catches.
I was getting to that. Thank you. If only someone would have pointed that out last week. No, they went up and won one-on-one battles, which is what they do, because Kalen King was incredible, absolutely incredible. And Johnny Dixon was not bad, despite the pass interference in the end zone and things like that. Penn State certainly did some really nice things at corner and in that secondary as a whole. Of course, we're going to lump those guys together. But yeah, this is a defense that was overwhelming. They went after it, and then they used, this is like the old momentum meter. I think, did Madden used to have that, where you would, I know FIFA and things like that have had it where you kept piling up, and things just got easier. And that's kind of how it worked. And, eventually you wear those teams down because you have better talent and speed and depth and everything like that. And sometimes you hurt a quarterback or something of that nature. But the fact that we saw 4 weeks of relentless football, relentless defense is pretty impressive, because that's tough to do. And Ohio State struggled with Maryland. Other teams have struggled with these teams that Penn State just dispatched fairly easily, with the exception of Michigan State. So it's really difficult to win 4 Big Ten games in a row, no matter the opponent, because crazy things happen. Football happens at times, but Penn State made it a point to not let that happen, and made it so that 4 weeks in a row was never really in doubt.
Yeah, I think the last game, Michigan State's always a weird game. It just, no matter what, even against this particular team that has all the issues we talked about before the game, and pretty much all of them came true during the game, they still made it a contest all the way down into the fourth quarter. It actually reminded me in the reverse of what happened to Penn State against Ohio State, where it's close, and then in the fourth quarter, Penn State just hit the accelerator, and they were able to get a big drive, big plays, explosive plays, turnovers, and it just snowballed on the Spartans to the point that Penn State was Ohio State in that situation and got the win that they were expected to get in that situation. So it's just to that point, it is very easy to let a game get away from you if you're not focused and performing in that 1-0 mentality. Getting back to the chat. I put this up earlier, but David says, Nick made me very sad, meaning Nick Tarburton, making Abdul Carter drop the pick 6. How transformative has Abdul Carter been on this defense? Because I think that is something that is, maybe I underrated at first, but I've gone back and looked at some of the things they've done. They've used him very differently over the course of the season. So what's been your view of the progress of Abdul Carter in conjunction with the defense, Fitz?
He's an eraser, man. You can put him out in any scenario, rushing the passer, dropping back in pass coverage, playing on the line of scrimmage against the run. I mean, he's just been a guy that you can throw in every scenario, and he's still getting better. That's the crazy thing, because he still has room to learn. But he's just so athletic, and the size to go along with that athleticism, I don't think is something that we probably talk about enough. I mean, there's athletic guys out there, there's big guys out there. Oftentimes they don't overlap like Abdul Carter. He's a freak. I called him a created player on Twitter the other day, because he's a guy that you just put and you can run all over the field. He's Lawrence Taylor on Tecmo Super Bowl. Just wherever he wants to go, he goes there fast. It's really special to watch him, and to think that he's a freshman and that he's picked it up this fast, because as we mentioned a dozen times, he was not this player last year. Like a year ago, he was not this guy in high school. He really, really evolved and picked things up, and bam, just took off. And it's really cool to see that sort of thing. And Manny has used him to his strengths. I don't know that we found too many weaknesses. Read and react at times has been a struggle for him, but at the same time, he's gotten better at that too. So it's really, really fun to watch his progress.
One of the coolest things that I saw this year was that the way they used him on third down, which is where we were introduced to him initially outside of the targeting call, was he got his first run in the Prowler package, and that, I guess, is what I looked at this week. And Nate, I'm going to need your help here because I'm doing a shameless plug for the magazine, writing a column on Abdul Carter and how Penn State has changed the evolution with the more he can do and what Fitz just described. Tell everyone when they can read how smart I am and how smart you are and how smart Fitz is in the Blue White Illustrated magazine. When's that coming out for Christmas?
It comes out Friday. It will be on my doorstep, which I will then take to local area stores. And so I think subscribers probably get it on Monday. But yeah, it will be in McClanahan's, both McClanahan's and State. If you're in the State College area, it'll be in the McClanahan stores, Lions Pride, Lion and Cub, and the student bookstore. So make that effort on my part worth it, please.
Yeah.
Go pick one up.
Yeah, and any of those stores, by the way, would be phenomenal sponsors of the BWI Daily Edition, by the way.
Wow.
Michael McCullen, Nate says, I'm doing three things at once here. I'm getting a sponsorships, and we're doing a great job on the show. You're getting great. Like, this is just synergy at its best. Michael McCullen says, is Cotton Bowl snub a reality? Insert Nate. So, Nate, back to you. We're talking bowls. Or I'll spare that pain for you, and we'll go to Matt, who just gave us $10. Thanks, Matt.
I missed the bowl rant last week, so I'm actually kind of sitting here with my popcorn waiting to hear another one.
Well, look, we're going to know next Sunday, and we can all be, amused or outraged or, what have you, based on what those decisions are. But I mean, it seems pretty clear to me. Am I wrong about this? If USC loses on Saturday, the Big Ten sends two to the playoff. Is that? And at that point, Penn State definitely goes to the Rose Bowl. There's a second option where the Rose Bowl just chooses Penn State. And for what reason or another, Ohio State decides that it doesn't want to be involved in the Rose Bowl. And then there's the Cotton Bowl as an at-large, or the Orange. I don't care. It does not matter. They are going to play. They are going to play in a bowl game. It will be fine. But it remains. It's fine. It's fine. It just, I do think I had a conversation with Ryan Snyder before the game on Saturday. And, he was saying something about how the Rose Bowl has a mystique to it. And I agree with him there, right? Like, as bowls go, and whether you've been there or not, I have had the good fortune to have been at a game at the Rose Bowl twice now. It's cool. Like it's very, very cool. AT&T Stadium in Dallas. Okay. Right. The Orange Bowl. All right. Okay. But when there's nothing on the line, it takes more than just the name to be special. And so I don't see that necessarily being the case with most of those other games, but we'll see.
Okay, let me ask you one quick follow-up question, and then I want to get to some other off-season stuff. Because we've talked a lot about playoff expansion, and we've talked a lot about the love of the bowl games and the tradition of the bowl games dying. How many bowl games do we care about? Because I feel like we're propping up the Rose Bowl as the one reason not to go to a playoff for like 15 or 20 years. So is that a fair assessment? I'll just throw this to the group. Is that a fair assessment, or are there other bowls that I'm not considering in the moment here that actually people feel the same way about that maybe aren't Big Ten bowls or just are one of the other New Year's Six that people like a lot?
I feel that way about the Outback Bowl, but I know everyone doesn't. That's always
you just want to go to Frenchie's. That's it. Yeah, that's all it's about.
Anyway, no, I mean, there's the mystique to the New Year's Six, but like it drops off considerably after that. I think the Citrus Bowl had a mystique for a long, long time, and then I got left out of that top tier. And that's a bowl where all of a sudden you go from 3 opt-outs to 8 opt-outs or something of that nature, because it's so much different. Penn State doesn't really factor into the Sugar Bowl the way that they're lined up for all intents and purposes. It's kind of like the Orange Bowl as well, although you have a little bit of an opening to get in the Orange Bowl. So I don't know. The Cotton Bowl I really enjoyed, but you put yourself in a situation where no matter who it is coming out of the group of 5, it's a no-win situation, or you feel like it's a no-win situation, because that's what the matchup says it is. So I do agree that the Rose Bowl for a Big Ten team, for a program that's got tradition like this, and for the programs that have traditionally gone to the Rose Bowl, I think that matters a little bit more. So I agree with Nate. And to be honest with you, I think it's tough from Nate and I's perspective, because a lot of this is selfishness. We want to go somewhere that's warm. We want to go somewhere that's fun.
You don't want to go to the Pinstripe Bowl?
It's not really high on my list. It's higher than Detroit, but at the same time, there's tiers to this, and you kind of prepare yourself when covering the team to figure out which tier you're going to be in. And then I'm rooting for the Outback Bowl over Jacksonville. I'm rooting for that over Orlando and things like that. So that's kind of where I've found myself. But Penn State's in that situation where they should be a New Year's Six team. Citrus Bowl's still floating out there as well. But I think, you've got to put yourself in a position to, from a program perspective, to sell as much as you can. And that's, Rose Bowl carries some clout with it.
We will be doing a full bowl preview show coming up on Wednesday, breaking down all the scenarios, potential teams, destinations. There'll be some fancy music along the way, and there'll be cocktails if you bring them. I won't be having. I won't have any to give to you, but we'll have the bowl selection show coming up this week. That was one of our more fun shows last year. It was a little more interesting when they were 7-6 and it wasn't so locked in. They could have gone a number of places. This year, I think we've got a lot of this worked out, but there's some weird math in the Pac-12 championship game that we got to get through, and we'll do all of that. Dedicate a whole show to it this week. Let's get back. Yes,
I just got to say one thing, just one, and then I promise I'll shut up. None of those games are worth the expense, or should be held or propped up at the expense of unifying and formalizing the sport. Like, the sport needs a playoff. All of it just zero of those games, even the Rose Bowl, are worth having or worth preserving at the expense of these other things. And anybody who goes to those games will tell you the exact same thing. Nobody is walking. If you were walking into the Cotton Bowl in the old Cotton Bowl Stadium in Dallas, okay, maybe. But it's just a game in the stadium with 100,000 people in Arlington, Texas. It's not the same thing. None of these things are the same thing that they were 30, 40, 50 years ago. And that, anyway, that's it. I'm done.
Well, and that is kind of what I was saying earlier, where you have these reasons for not doing something, but they tend to get quickly outdated. Let's switch back to talking about the team and what comes next, because we discussed the final game. We discussed the breaking news today. But there is the next step, and that's what I think a lot of people are very excited about with this team and the news coming up today. So with the transfer portal heating up and Texas A&M apparently losing 90% of its players, from what I can tell from the On3 graphics, what should Penn State fans expect, both good and bad, as far as, rough timelines, or how did this all worked out previously fits when it comes to player intro and exit from the program?
Well, it's a give and take, and the new rules make it so that you can't go into the portal at a certain date, and it changes some things because, you have a very good idea right now of the guys that you're going to be able to keep and the guys that you don't have to, overwork to keep, but at the same time, you also have a good idea of what you need, and when it all hits at the same time, that's actually good for you. You've got an opportunity with these windows to fill those holes. Now, has it worked out for them in the past? Otherwise, yes, you got Chop Robinson late last year when you were going after some other guys at defensive end early, and you struck out on those guys and happened to fall into Chop Robinson, which was pretty great for Penn State. But this gives you a little bit more order. It's going to be chaos in the sense that there's going to be a lot of guys that hit the portal that, probably in years past would not have done so. You've got NIL playing into things. You've got a little bit more of this sense of how things are going to work. If you're a player now, there's a little bit more power for the player here, which is good. So that's going to make some things crazy. As we've been saying on our boards for the last couple of months, prepare yourself for the unknown. I mean, it might be a guy that pops into the portal that you just was like, why would this guy go there? And you've got, no good reason, but that player has a very good reason because he's trying to find the best fit for him, whether that be NIL, whether that be another opportunity. You saw Jordan Addison last year step up and go play at a different level and go play at USC. You might see some of that stuff. I don't know that it impacts the upper tier of college football, the top 15, 20 programs. It will certainly, maybe on a smaller level, but they're going to be able to harvest from those schools below them. And I think you've started to see that with FCS programs. FCS guys have gone in the portal. They've gotten offers from that lower level FBS. You're going to see lower level FBS guys that have been stars and have been all MAC players and have been all Sun Belt guys step up, and maybe they take the next step. So it's going to be chaos. I'm not sure how much of that chaos is going to be focused here in Happy Valley, but it's going to be certainly plowing new ground. If you're following college football, it's going to be the new normal. It's going to be crazy, I think.
Yeah. When you're looking at this roster, what are if Penn State could fill a wish list, what are the positions 1A through however many you got, what they're looking for, targeting to make this team not have to rebuild, but reload at every position and be that competitive team that we've got people in chat saying 2023 national champions. We got people very excited about next year. So where is Penn State going to fill those holes?
We got people taking spread bets on the national championship game against Georgia. So I don't know if that's the best place to look for these comments. Receiver, obviously, even if you get everybody that you hope to get back, you still have holes, and you still have, spots where you could put in a guy that's been productive at a high level and like a Mitchell Tinsley. I don't know that it worked out as well for Mitchell Tinsley as he thought that it may, based on the production that he had at Western Kentucky. But still, you can find a guy that's been productive at a high level, put him in there and get a starter. I mean, you look at this roster, you look at this depth chart, where can you find a starter? I think wide receiver just kind of, throws it right in your face there. Defensive tackle is one where we talked about this early in the show. That's going to be a spot where they need, but really they're going to look at every position. I mean, you look at the scenarios on this roster, running back, what Kevon Lee decides to do may be irrelevant because you need more running backs. London Montgomery is coming in off of, season-ending knee surgery. So can you count on him as a true freshman? It's hard to say. So finding depth guys at running back, maybe even a quarterback, Christian Veillere, what's he going to do? That's a big time cog in trying to figure out what you can do in that room moving forward. Offensive line, we talked about that in the show earlier. Yep. But yeah, there's so many positions where you could make an argument. I don't know that they'd be top of the board like receiver, like defensive tackle, but you can make an argument where you can fill space there. Even corner. I mean, you look at the way that Penn State has, recruited corner, developed corner, and sent guys to the pros as corner. It looks like a spot where you wouldn't need help. But hey, Johnny Dixon started a bunch of games as a transfer this year, so I could see them prioritizing corner, and that's a spot where they've offered a ton of guys in the past. So you fall back on the past recruiting relationships, you fall back on some of that other stuff, and maybe you find yourself with a guy that could be your third corner next year.
I can't stress enough how important corner is when it comes to not just Manny Diaz's defense, but keeping yourself competitive in a lot of these games. They are the high end of any position is rare, but high end first round type corners, which Penn State has 2 of them right now. If you want to keep that gravy train rolling. Nate, I want to throw this to you because one of the things that you and I talked about at the beginning of the season was, can Penn State get to 30 points on offense? And here's what they did throughout the season. They scored 38.8 points per game, 20th in college football. Is this an attractive destination now for receivers to come and play at Penn State, in your opinion?
Yeah, that number is slightly, and this goes for everyone, so I don't want to downplay it too much, but it's slightly inflated by some defensive touchdowns, right? We have seen those and their impact on games this season. But yeah, I think that anybody who is evaluating, well, first of all, yes, there are the personnel decisions to make, right? The offensive line, how good is it going to be? You've got these 2 stud running backs that are going to have the ball in their hands. You've got a quarterback who appears to be in a place where he's going to be able to deliver the football all over the field. You've got some stud tight ends. All I'm saying is there are reasons to be, it's a pros and cons, right? When there's that much talent at some of these other positions, that might make you a little bit wary, especially seeing, like Sean just mentioned, Mitchell Tinsley's situation, which was good. This has been a good thing for Mitchell Tinsley. It's just not like at the level of, again, 85 catches, right? So you're going to have to share the football with the group that they have coming back. None of this addresses the elephant in the room that has to be said, which is like, what are the NIL opportunities? What are they? And if you're going to attract this talent, it especially for guys that are going to be here for a couple of years, if you have a guy who's just looking to make that jump and get into the NFL and feels like the exposure being at a place like Penn State will provide, that's one thing. Like, that's its own conversation. You want NIL to be attached to that, but it's kind of its own deal. For the guys that are going to be around, they're going to want to see some evidence. They're going to want to see some reason to believe that not only can they have a productive career at Penn State that propels them to the next level, but they can earn a little bit while they're doing so. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see who comes in, who maybe leaves. We're gonna have to wait and see.
Well, that'll do it today for the BWI Daily Edition. Fitz, you're our Adam Schefter, and you've been on your phone, so there's stuff going on. I don't want to keep you any longer than we have to, and you've already given us a ton of time. Any last thoughts that you guys have before we get out of here? Fitz, you got anything?
No. Building on Nate's last point, this staff is really good at selling different data points. So you're selling to a receiver that he can be Jahan Dotson while catching balls from a 5-star quarterback. That's an attractive situation. And as Nate mentioned, the NIL will be important, but also putting yourself in position to earn at the next level is also important. And let's face it, they can sell. This staff does a really good job of selling and selling the vision, and that opportunity will certainly be there. I think they're going to get a productive guy at receiver. It's just a matter of how does he fit, where does he fit, which spot makes the most sense, and I guess we'll see over the next couple of weeks, because it's going to be exciting.
It's already exciting. We've got an awesome show today. I want to thank everyone who showed up today. We've got a great crowd tonight. You've been super entertaining. You've been super engaged. I love it. But that'll do it today for the BWI Daily Edition. One last thing before you go. He just said it. Fitz just said it. We're going to find out, and they're going to be looking for those guys. And the best place to get your information before you see it on Twitter, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Sign up for $10. You get access to premium information. You get access to what he's looking at right now in a distilled form. And you'll get the information to let your friends know that you're the smartest Penn State football fan of the group. And while you're at it, subscribe here to the YouTube channel. That'll do it for today. We'll be back tomorrow with the recruiting show, all kinds of great stuff in the offseason. We are not slowing down. We are hitting the gas on the Penn State football season, and hoops coming up this week, and bowl stuff. So stay tuned to Blue White Illustrated.